Any non-trivial program that you write is going to be full of calculations. You're going to be calculating things like scores and prices and all kinds of things. And in order to do that, you need expressions and you need operators to build those expressions. An expression is essentially just a collection of operators and operands, which are the things that operators work on, that produce a result. So for example, if we had an expression like this, where we had 5 plus 2 times the absolute value of x, that is an expression. And the plus and the star, those are operators. Operators are simply symbols and functions that determine how expressions are evaluated. So, for example, we of course have the arithmetic operators. These are pretty common in almost every programming language. There's addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and the percent sign may be something you have not seen before, but it exists in a lot of other languages like C and JavaScript and Objective-C and C++. It's the remainder or modulus operator. Basically, it gives you the leftover results of a division operation. So, for example, 5 modulus 2 would be 5 divided by 2, but what's left over, so it would be 1. There's also the assignment operator. The assignment operator is the equals sign. So, take an example. If we had two variables, x and y, and we wanted to add them together using the plus operator or the addition operator, we could then take the result of that expression and assign it to a third variable called result using the equal sign. If we had a variable named distance and we wanted to add a number to it, we could do distance equals distance plus 10. This takes the existing variable, adds 10 to it, puts the result back in the same variable. In fact, this is so common that there's a shorthand notation for doing this. You could write distance equals distance plus 10 the same way by just doing distance plus equals 10. And in C# that means take the variable and add to itself the number on the right-hand side. It also works, of course, for the minus, the multiplication, the divide, and the modulus operators as well. In addition to the math operators, there are also comparison operators. So, for example, we can check to see if things are equal to or not equal to each other by using the equality check operators. The two equal signs together say, hey, is A equal to B? Do they have the same value? We can check for things that are not equal by replacing the first equal sign with an exclamation point. In this case, this says A not equal to B. And as you might expect, there are also operators for comparison testing to see if there are larger or smaller numbers. We can do things like A larger than B, A less than B, A larger than or equal to B, and A less than or equal to B. The logical operators, such as AND and OR, allow you to combine more than one condition. So, for example, the AND operator we can use to see if A is equal to B and C is equal to D. You use two ampersands together, there's no space in there. You just put them next to each other, and that is a logical AND operator. We can do the same thing for OR. The OR operator is just two vertical bars. So in this case, if A is equal to B or C is equal to D, then the code inside those curly braces would execute. We can also do a NOT operator. The NOT operator you can place in front of any Boolean expression to produce the opposite of what that value evaluates to. So for example, in this case, we were saying if not some Boolean value. So if we set A to true for a certain Boolean value, then if we use bool B equals not A, that gives us the inverse value of A. So B is now false. That's what the NOT operator does. There are also operators for incrementing and decrementing, because again, this happens a lot in programming. The increment operators are, as you might expect, the addition operator, where you simply take A and add 1 to itself. We've already seen how to reduce that down using shorthand notation to take the value of a variable and add a value to itself. But there's even a shorter hand way of doing this, because this is so common. So there's the plus plus and the plus plus operator postfix and prefix. So when the plus plus comes after the variable, that's postfix. And when plus plus comes before the variable, that's prefix. They both do the same thing. They both add 1 to whatever the variable is, but they do it in a certain way that's slightly different from each other, and we'll see why in just a moment. As you might expect, there's also decrement operators. So for A plus 1, we also have A equals A minus 1. And we've already talked about how we can do the minus equals operator, but there's also post and prefix versions of decrement as well, where you simply put two minus signs next to the variable rather than two plus signs. So what's the difference there? The difference is this. Suppose we had a variable whose value was 10. If we use this statement, console.writeLine, the value of a is, and using our string formatting, we put the value of a into that replacement curly brace expression there, the plus plus prefix notation would execute first before putting the value into the string. So in this case, the output would be 11 because a gets incremented before it gets put into the value of those curly braces. If we use the postfix notation, that increment would get done after the substitution took place. So in that case, the output would be 10, even though a would then be incremented and would be equal to 11. So that's the main difference between prefix and postfix increment. There's also type testing operators. There's the is operator and the as operator. And we'll learn more about these as we go through the object-oriented part of the course, but essentially what happens here is the is operator returns true if a given object is a certain type. The as operator takes a given object and converts it to another type if it's possible to do so. So let's just take a quick example, and I understand if you don't follow along right away with this, but as we get to the chapter on object orientation, this will become more clear. So suppose we had a function that takes an object, a generic object type. We can say something like if obj is the type of employee object. So the is operator will return true if the object is of type employee. And if that's the case, we can then use the as operator, which will convert the object to the type that we give it. And if it can't be done, it will return null. So in this case, we're taking the employee emp and we're saying obj as employee. So it's converting the object to an employee object, which we can then operate on. There's also an operator called the ternary operator. Now, most operators we've seen so far are binary operators. So for addition, for example, you have two operands. You have the two operands that are being added together. The ternary operator works a little bit differently. It actually has three operands, and it's written using the question mark and the colon. It operates as if it were a very compact if-else statement. So it works like this. You have a condition which evaluates to true or false, just like in an if statement. You then put the question mark next to it, and then the value that you want to be assigned in the case that the condition is true, and then a colon, and the value that you want to be assigned in case the condition is false. So let's take a real example. Suppose we had a couple of prices, and we wanted to find out which of price 1 and price 2 was the low price. Now we could write it like this. We could say if price 1 is less than price 2, then the low price equals price 1. Otherwise, low price is price 2. Or we could write it like this. We could say low price is equal to, and then the condition here is price 1 less than price 2. Now, if that evaluates to true, we put the question mark there, price 1 would be the low price. That's the true case. And then a colon, and then the value for the false case. In this case, it would be price 2. So you can see we've taken the if statement and compacted it down to just one line of code. Finally, there's operator precedence. Most programming languages have the notion of operator precedence. Operators are operated on in a particular order based upon what the operator is. So let's take a look at an example. Suppose I had this expression. I have an integer variable named result, and there's a whole bunch of numbers being operated on. 2 plus 3 times 6 divided by 2. The temptation, of course, is to execute this expression going from the left and traveling to the right, just like you probably learned in school. And if you did that, you'd probably say, okay, well, 2 plus 3 is 5, and then 5 times 6 is 30, and then 30 divided by 2 is 15. So, hey, the answer must be 15, right? Well, wrong. And the reason it's wrong is because those operators are executed in order based upon what the operator is. This is what operator precedence means. So that's actually wrong. What happens is the multiplication operator gets executed first because that comes first in the precedence order. So 3 times 6 would be 18. Then the division operator would execute, and 18 divided by 2 would be 9. Then we would go back and we would do the addition because 9 plus 2 is now 11. So the real result would be 11. Now you can change the order of precedence by using parentheses. So if we put parentheses around the 2 and the 3, then things would execute in the order that you thought they would. In this case, the 2 plus 3 would be executed first because it's in parentheses. Then times 6 is 30, divided by 2 is 15. So the answer in that case would be 15. So how do you know which operators come first? Well, let's take a look. The operator precedence operates in a very predictable order. First, there's the multiplicative operators, which are things like multiplication, division, and the modulus operator. Next comes the additive operators, which in this case are plus and minus. Then there's the comparison and type testing. So things like greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than equal to, the is, the as operators. Then the equality tests come, so equal to and not equal to. That's followed by conditional and, which is followed by conditional or. Then the ternary operator comes, and then finally the last operator to execute is the assignment operator. Keep these rules in mind because this is the source of a lot of bugs in programs of beginning developers, and once you realize that the operators execute in an order of precedence, this will save you a lot of headaches down the road.